Ohio State and Notre Dame. Need we say more? Yeah, we probably do. As we welcome in Tony Gerdeman from BuckeyeHuddle.com. Gerd, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk briefly about what we saw last Saturday against Western Kentucky. I think that's pretty much what we thought the recipe would be all season long for the Buckeyes. The big win over the Hilltoppers. Offense was clicking, defense was clicking. What you wanted to see going into a top 10 showdown.
No, you're exactly right. What they wanted to see on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. That's why I asked Ryan Day, when you left the field, what did you feel better about, the offense or the defense? And he said, I just like the intensity. And to me, they finally got what they wanted out of their offense. But I think seeing what they saw from the defense probably had to make them feel even better knowing what was coming. But it was the perfect time for the best game of the year, because now it can be used as an example of see what that preparation all week brought us. Now let's continue that on.
Defense tested by Western Kentucky because they're an air attack. Defense is going to be tested a different way against Notre Dame, very much a pro-style offense for the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, and this is something that Ohio State really hasn't faced much of. You know, they saw a little bit of it against Youngstown State, but that's still just Youngstown State. They're really going to be tested with the play action, with the tight end situation that Notre Dame will like to use. So it's a different style than what, as you said, Western Kentucky was doing. So it's going to require some different things, different discipline from the safeties in terms of the play action, not being sucked up too much by the run fake, but also being available to help the run. So it's going to be an interesting test. It's something that they haven't really seen too much of yet. And we know they hadn't seen an air raid attack like Western Kentucky. So we weren't sure how they were going to respond to that. They responded exceptionally well, holding Western Kentucky to just 10 points and 200 and some yards, like a little over 200 yards passing, which is well below their average. Or they've led the nation in passing yards 2 years in a row. And to hold that program to just 200 yards passing, or 207, I think it was, something like that, that's impressive. So now this is the next test that they will face, and it's going to be different, but they have an experienced group of guys who have seen success and what it has taken to get there. And it's a confident bunch as well.
It's interesting, the similarities between Ohio State and Notre Dame, and I guess we shouldn't be too surprised when you look at the fact that Notre Dame's head coach, Marcus Freeman, a former Buckeye linebacker. We got a couple of former Ohio State assistants on staff with Freeman, and we've got some Notre Dame ties now into the Ohio State program as well. Outside of perhaps the experience at quarterback, these are two very similar teams right now.
Yeah, two top 10 teams that are doing it from kind of the inside out and building a more well-rounded program in terms of, it's not just run on NIL or run on the head coach being on TV a lot. It's interesting the way both programs have been built, and then they rely on the offensive line, the defensive line. That's where things start. And you know, it is the dichotomy of quarterbacks that they have right now, the experience being with Notre Dame, the lack of experience with Kyle McCord at quarterback. It's a juxtaposition of last year with C.J. Stroud and Tyler Buckner. And it'll be interesting to see how much that is an advantage for Notre Dame. And I think the home field, there's a lot of reasons to think Notre Dame has some advantages in this one. But we talk about that Western Kentucky game for Ohio State, and it was just Western Kentucky. But you saw what it looked like when things are going well on both sides of the ball for Ohio State. So it's going to be a great test for both squads. Defenses are both good. Secondaries are both good. And as Ryan Day has said, it'll come down to the fourth quarter. And while I just talked about the secondaries, it's going to be the offensive and defensive lines that get the job done.
Another similarity between the programs, Notre Dame leading the nation in pass efficiency, yet they haven't had a whole lot of sacks. Ohio State hasn't had a whole lot of sacks either. Fan bases are concerned about that on both sides. Coaching staffs really don't seem to be that concerned about the lack of sacks from the defensive line from both teams.
Yeah, and it's I think sack is one of the stats that we on the outside love to talk about, because it's an easy measurement. It's like receiving yards or rushing yards or passing yards. It's one way that we can measure a defensive end or a defensive line, because we're not watching the film. But pass efficiency defense is what Marcus Freeman is more focused on, and they're leading the nation in that. And that takes into account, completion percentage, lack of big plays, all of the things that a defensive coach likes, just the overall difficulty of passing against a team. Because you can sack a quarterback and have it lose 1 yard and be faced with a 2nd and 11 and give up a 60-yard touchdown pass. And what good did that sack do you? It's about play after play after play. It's not just the 5 sacks that you can get in a game that makes the box score look good. It's about the difficulty of an offense just going down the field trying to throw and complete passes on you. And so, yeah, you'll talk to any coach. Yeah, they all want sacks, but they believe that'll come in the process of sound defense and pass efficiency defense. You've got two of the best in the country going at it this weekend.
Let's talk a little bit more about the Ohio State offense. Of course, last week, Kyle McCord officially anointed as QB1, and he had a great week of practice. It paid off against Western Kentucky. Was that because he was QB1, or is that just sort of the natural progression of Kyle McCord, that he finally was playing in a game that they could throw the ball quite a bit? They had a lot of possessions, and that was just the natural byproduct.
I think both. I think the simple fact that he was going to get the majority of the snaps and not have to worry about coming out in the second quarter, that builds some confidence, that builds some rhythm, that allows him to stay basically up to date on how things are going on the field and off the field. But Ryan Day even said you could tell off the field that was his best week of practice. Was that coincidence or not? You know, when you're told you are the guy and then you go out and have your best week of practice, hard to imagine that's just coincidence. So then when you go and play your best game, it's hard to imagine that is just coincidence as well. I think it is a byproduct of, this is your team now. This is your offense. Go lead us. Because that's what these guys come to Ohio State to do. The quarterbacks come to Ohio State to lead the program. And so you've put in, this is Cal McCord's third year. He finally gets that opportunity. And the guardrails were kind of taken off after the first couple of weeks. And now this is your team. So go lead us, go see what you can do with it. And, you know, they put up 49 points on offense, and, you know, it looked good doing it.
Ryan Day and Jim Knowles both talk about this being a matchup game, similar to Georgia, Michigan, Penn State, a situation where Ohio State and their opponent match up in terms of talent on the field. And that kind of changes the dynamic of just going out there. And it's not necessarily about style points anymore, at least for this week. It's about finding a way to win the game.
It was interesting. I think Ryan Day was asked essentially, you know, you guys had a great offense last year, but you only beat Notre Dame 21-10. And he was like, it doesn't matter what the score is in matchup games. You're not worried about stats. You just want to win and move on. And it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this game versus how they approach the Georgia game, where Ryan Day and his staff and the players felt like they let one get away against Michigan. They didn't swing as hard as they needed to. So they were going to go into that game and swing and not worry about anything else, just swing for the fences every single time. I don't necessarily expect that in this game because the stakes aren't as dire or aren't as necessary. This isn't do or die. This also isn't the same. Notre Dame is not what Georgia was last year. So I think you can approach it differently, but having that aggression, having that confidence, that is something that you need to take into this game and have it at your disposal. Whether or not you need to use it or whether or not you choose to use it is a different story. But as Marcus Freeman said on Monday, last year, Notre Dame kind of played not to lose, and they don't want to do that this year. That doesn't mean they're going to be throwing the ball all over the place and being crazy, but they do want to be more aggressive, and I think Ohio State does too. And neither one of these programs just want to. These teams want to just go in and be safe and play not to lose. Though it will be interesting to see the feeling out period of the first quarter, and then it's usually like each team gets a fake drive, and then the game actually starts taking place late in the first, early in the second quarter.
Ohio State Buckeyes making just their third trip to South Bend. They won in 1996. They lost back in the 30s. The only time Notre Dame has beaten Ohio State was those matchups way back 90-some years ago. I want to thank our guest, Tony Gerdeman from BuckeyeHuddle.com, for joining us. Gerd, thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you for having me.